Schools are supposed to be safe, places where nothing follows you home, and nothing waits after dark. But every school has empty hallways, locked classrooms, and moments when you realize you're not as alone as you thought. Tonight I'm sharing 6 terrifying school stories. Stories that happened when the lights were off, when the bells stopped ringing, and when no one was supposed to be there. These aren't legends. These aren't rumors. These are the stories people still refuse to talk about. Turn the lights down and listen carefully.
This was something that happened so long ago that a lot of details are a little blurry. It's not like it happened yesterday. I'll try my best to fill in smaller details that I don't fully remember with how I best remember things played out. It was the last day of school. I was in the 4th grade. 4th grade was the last year in our elementary school where kids had to be picked up by their parents. 5th graders were allowed to walk home on their own. My mom would always be the one to pick me up. On the last day of school, my friend Dennis and I had a playdate planned to celebrate the last day of school. Dennis wasn't in my class this year, but we had been friends since kindergarten. He was in a different dismissal hallway from me. After school was over, we single file lined up and walked to the exit door at the end of the hall, where we waited outside by our teacher, Miss Blue. I waited for Dennis's dad to appear from the crowd of parents shuffling in and out of the parking lot next to the doors. Then I heard my name. Tommy, Tommy. I look over and see a man waving at me as he approached. He introduced himself as Dennis's uncle and said he was picking me up. I went over to Miss Blue and said I'm being picked up. She asked, "Where is he, sweetie?" And I pointed to Dennis's uncle who waved at Miss Blue. Miss Blue dismissed me and I went with the man. He led us through the crowd and was a very quick and jittery talker, like he spoke fast and had a bit of a stutter. He was walking incredibly fast. It was almost hard to keep up with him with my backpack on. He explained to me that his brother, or Dennis's dad, was working later than expected, so he was driving me back. We got to his car, which was a dark red hatchback type car from what I remember, and it took me this long to acknowledge the giant elephant in the room. Where was Dennis? Why weren't we picking him up too? The man turned to look at me in the back seat and said that Dennis was already at his house. I was shy around people I didn't know, especially adults, and I wasn't one to openly speak my mind if I was confused. But I was very confused. This was making less and less sense. The whole drive, the man kept yapping, telling stories of his days in elementary, asking me questions like what sports I played, what we're learning in class. If I had to guess, we were in the car for like 10 minutes, which honestly for our town where houses were right on top of each other, that was a while. My house was a 5-minute walk away from the school. We were definitely in an area I wasn't familiar with when he parked the car in front of his house. His house looked pretty normal to me from what I remember. He led us inside and shut the door and locked it behind us. It was really, really dark inside the place, and I realized why. All the curtains were shut. It almost felt like it was nighttime in there, especially because the only source of light was a dim lamp in the corner of the room. He then looked at me and smiled. I said, "Where's Dennis?" And he started acting really jittery and nervous seeming. He said something like, "Oh, I think he's downstairs playing video games. Give me a second. Wait here." He then disappeared into a nearby room, and I heard a door open and then footsteps descending into a basement. I know my heart was already racing. I knew I was in danger. I went to the door to quietly try to open it, but I couldn't. It had some kind of lock that must have needed a key for. I really started to panic now, yet I still probably held out a little bit of hope that Dennis would be coming up those stairs. But I knew the chances of that were slim. I regretted entering that house. I did the only thing I could think to do. I went to the kitchen and found a phone hung on the wall. I picked it off the receiver and dialed 911. The first thing I said when they answered was in a whisper, "Please come to this house. I've been kidnapped." They heard me, they acknowledged me, but I didn't say another word. I hid the phone under a towel in the corner of the room with 911 still on the line. I hurried back to where the man left me as I already heard his footsteps coming back upstairs. Then he called my name, saying, "Come down, Dennis is down here." Then there was a pause. He repeated my name, and when I didn't answer, he came up the stairs fully to look at me. He asked me if I was okay. I felt so sick, and I was so scared. I hated myself for walking into this situation and not being wiser. I asked in a very scared voice if I could leave, and I remember the change in his face. His fake, friendly smile disappeared as he realized that I was no longer falling for this. He walked closer to me in a gentle manner until he was close enough to grab my wrist aggressively, and he started pulling me towards the basement. I screamed and cried, and he screamed at me, "I'll let you go if you stop and behave." So I listened. I went down the stairs, and halfway down, the door slammed shut behind me, and I heard it lock. I walked fully down the stairs to this empty, unfinished basement with a concrete floor and one singular support beam in the middle of the room. There was a depressing yellow glow in the room from one exposed light bulb hanging on the ceiling. If there was a place you'd imagine kidnapped children to go, this would be it. I heard his heavy footsteps upstairs. You could hear everything in this house. I don't know what he was doing, but I heard him walking around for a while. Then he came to the basement door, opened it, and he called down asking if I'm hungry. I replied no. I didn't want him going into the kitchen seeing the missing phone. He shut the door and locked it again. I sat down there, waiting, with my heart in my throat, and then I heard it. The doorbell ringing 3 times from upstairs, followed by banging sounds, which were definitely the sounds of police banging on the door. I would refrain from screaming until I heard the front door open, but I never heard the man's footsteps approach the door. The doorbell kept ringing, and I kept hearing the bangs. This went on for some time, until I heard a really loud bang sound, and then multiple heavy footsteps and multiple screaming voices. I started screaming for help as loud as I could at the top of the stairs, banging on the door. The door was unlocked, and a police officer on the other side grabbed hold of me and hurried me outside. There were at least 3 cop cars outside. I had to tell everything to 2 of the cops outside as we waited for my parents to show up. The man from inside was brought outside and into a cop car in handcuffs, and that was the last time I ever saw him. When my parents arrived on the scene, my mom was bawling her eyes out. There had already been a whole scene at the school as cops were called and Dennis's dad realized what happened. This man was a work associate of Dennis's father. When he somehow learned that Dennis's dad would be picking up Dennis and I from school on the last day, he seized the opportunity to do what he did. A complete sick fuck. I don't know how he found out what I looked like. As I got older, I never really asked for more details because I try not to think about it. My mom went to counseling with me for months after this incident. Let's just say my parents didn't have kind words for Miss Blue, not verifying if I actually knew the person picking me up. If I didn't think to call the police before he basically threw me in that basement, I know for a fact I'd be dead right now. This was like 17 years ago. That man might be out of prison for all I know. It was junior year of high school, and it was the last day of school. A lot of people cut school this day or left early after lunch period. My friends and I were some of the latter. It was a stormy, dark day. A bunch of people from our grade originally planned to hit the beach on the last day of school, but that was obviously canceled. So my smaller core group of friends decided to do something else. There used to be an abandoned elementary school in town that hadn't been used for like 10 years. There were plans to tear it down by the year's end. So, still wanting to do something fun on the last day of school, we all agreed to break into the building and just fuck around exploring. There were no cameras in that old building, and on a stormy day, no one would be outside monitoring the place or anything, so we all left after lunch period. Our friend Eddie already had a car and his license, so he drove us all to the abandoned school. The school was in the middle of a neighborhood, not on any main roads or anything. There was a back parking lot covered by overgrown bushes and trees on one side, and the walls of the school on 2 other sides. It was a perfect spot to park and go unnoticed. The place wasn't boarded up or anything, it was just locked up. Eddie had a baseball bat in his trunk that he took out to smash one of the windows of the school. I was honestly so nervous that even through the pouring rain, one of the houses over the fence would hear the smashing sound. We all watched and nervously laughed as Eddie swung the bat into the window in front of the car, and after a few good swings, smashing it. He pushed away the stray pieces of glass stuck to the frame with the bat, and then he waved us over. We one by one climbed through the window into the school. My logic was that the school was being torn down anyway. What does a broken window matter? We all were inside the building now. The window we climbed through was actually one of the windows for a classroom. A lot of stuff was still left in the room, including the desks and some decorations on the walls. Based on the decorations, it looked like we were in a 4th or 5th grade classroom. It was very surreal to be inside of what was once an active classroom where little kids would come to learn. Now nothing but a cold, dark, and abandoned room collecting dust waiting to be destroyed. The sounds of thunder and lightning outside also added to the surreal feeling of it all. There were no lights on in the building. Power to the place was likely cut completely. We anticipated this though. The flashlights on our phones were plenty to get around and see. Even without them, it wasn't completely pitch black in there, as even though it was a dark day, some light was still creeping in through the windows and doors. We started traversing the hallways, going from room to room. Each classroom was still full of desks and chairs that hadn't been sat in probably a decade. We all 4 were in the same classroom when there was a sound that echoed down the hallway and into the classroom. We all went silent and turned off our lights for a moment. After a flash of lightning, we slowly accepted that it was probably nothing, so we continued on. We just went from room to room as our wet shoes all squeaked on the floors. Sneaking around wasn't possible, really. A lot of things in the school were visibly decaying. You could really tell no one had stepped foot in there in ages. As we neared the corner of the hall, I turned around just to look back down the other way, and at the doorway of one of the classrooms, it looked like there was something sticking out from the classroom. I asked my friends to also look. Their lights would maybe help see what it was. When all 4 of us were pointing our phone flashlights toward the door, whatever that thing we were seeing was retracted into the classroom. All 4 of us quietly went "oh shit" amongst ourselves, and we started running down the intersecting hallway. We stopped when we were far enough away. It seemed we were in the kindergarten wing now. Then we heard another sound echo from down the hallway. It seemed we weren't alone. But who could be in here was the question. The place was locked up and every light in the building was off. The sound scared us into going into the first classroom we could find and shutting the door. It was indeed a kindergarten classroom. We were now concerned we'd get in trouble, so we waited in silence with our flashlights off. The rain was still coming down hard, and there was still thunder and lightning crashing every 20 seconds or so. Suddenly, the door to the classroom clicked open, and someone pushed it as it eerily creaked to a fully open position. We didn't see anyone at the doorway though, and the hallway was almost pitch black. We all tried our best to stay quiet, and then, slowly, something appeared through the doorway. It was the shape of a head. We all saw it, and when there was another flash of lightning, we saw what it was. It was in fact someone's head, looking into the classroom directly at us. I started apologizing for all of us, saying we're leaving. The person at the doorway didn't move. They motionlessly and almost lifelessly just peered around the doorway in the classroom. Eddie asked, "Do you work here?" No response. Eddie had a fuck this moment clearly. He handed me the bat as he struggled to unlock one of the windows to slide it open just enough to crawl through. He crawled out first, then my other 2 friends, and I was last. Before I crawled out, I looked back one more time at the head at the doorway. I crawled through as quickly as I could, fearing I'd hear the person run up behind me and grab my legs. Once I was out, I ran to catch up with my friends who were already booking it back to Eddie's car. We drove out of there in a hurry and never looked back. The building was torn down later that year and has since been turned into a park. We never got in trouble for breaking in. To this day, we have no idea if that was some kind of worker or just some random person. Either way, it was extremely creepy behavior on their part. When I was a freshman in college, I took a chemistry class. It was really difficult for me. The tables were arranged in groups of 4. I sat at a middle table at the left side all the way to the end. Next to me was a guy named Zach. He was very awkward. He gave me Reddit moderator vibes. To describe his appearance, he was like 5'8", he was a little overweight, and he had a really ugly, patchy beard. But he knew his stuff in chemistry. I think he was just good in school overall. We started to talk in a pretty cordial way when he noticed I sucked in class, and I would ask him for help. He started offering to do my homework for me, and he even let me cheat off him on tests. I never got any kind of flirtatious vibes from Zach, but that might have been because he was just too awkward to flirt in person. He eventually asked for my number so that he could send me homework-related stuff. Obviously, I gave it to him. He was helping me out a ton and didn't give off any threatening vibes. He just seemed a little reclusive. Fast forward to the last day of class, and Zach did something completely unexpected. He asked me if I wanted to go on a date with him after class. I had no physical attraction to Zach in the slightest, and our personalities were complete opposites. But he did help me throughout the semester maintain an A, so I had to let him down super politely. I lied and told him I'm going away to Miami for the next couple of weeks and won't be around. He right away responded, "What about when you get back?" I felt like 2 weeks was long enough of a gap in seeing each other where he would probably lose interest. So I said, "Yeah, I could be around," or something like that. He responded with a really cringy, "Cool," as he nodded his head in response. From here till the end of class that day was really awkward for me. After class, I left straight for my car and drove right home. I was a commuter, not a dormer, so after the last day of class was over, that was it. It was Thursday, and my other friends who went to the same school wanted to go out that night, so we hit town that night, and at some point, I got a text from Zach. He asked, "When are you going to Miami?" I told my friends all about Zach while we were drunk, how he got me an A, but now he wanted a date. My friends joked that I should just go on the date with him to be nice. I joked back sarcastically, "Yeah, for sure." I told myself I'd respond to it later, but I was drunk and completely forgot to. The next day, I woke up to 2 follow-up texts, one with question marks, and then the next one, "You're going to ignore me now that you don't need me anymore, right?" So I replied, "Hey, I'm sorry, I was packing. I'm going to Miami today." He replied almost instantly saying, "Okay." Obviously, there was no Miami trip, but he should have never found that out. Later that night, my girls and I went out again, and while out, I got a scary text from Zach saying, "I thought you said you were going to Miami tonight." I almost dropped my drink when I saw this. I showed it to my girls, and they were all freaked out just like I was. I replied to Zach, "What do you mean?" And he replied, "Nothing, forget it. I just don't like liars." I genuinely was scared that I was being stalked. I looked around the whole bar, but he wasn't there, at least as far as I knew. So what the hell? I just didn't answer. At that point, I never planned on answering him again. It wasn't until late that night, shortly after I got home, like literally taking my shoes off inside, that there were knocks at the door. It had to be like 1 a.m. I said, "Who is it?" And it was Zach on the other side. He said, "It's me." I wanted to scream. I was home alone. I yelled through the door to leave, or my dad will come out and kick your ass. That seemed to work, as he didn't knock again. I texted everyone I knew about the situation, my family, all my friends. I was horrified. Some suggested calling the police. I said I would go to the nearest station tomorrow, but tomorrow didn't even come yet, when I received a super long, disgustingly weird and creepy text from guess who? I was appalled when I picked up my phone and read it. This is what it said. "I'm feeling a lot of emotions right now after being used by someone for months and then lied to, and hurt and anger are 2 of them. I thought from the start of the semester in chemistry class that our chemistry was through the roof. No pun intended. I must say, I am hurt that you would make up something as elaborate as a 2-week-long Miami trip just to avoid going out with me, even after I stuck my neck out for you all semester and risked my own academic standing. I definitely have noticed the way you looked at me sometimes in class, and I can't pretend there wasn't a hint of interest there. All I'm asking for at this point is for 1 date. That's it. I'm not asking your hand at marriage, though I surely would be quite an ideal husband to have if I do say so myself. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you needed more time to think over the prospect of going on a date with me. I know how much I have to offer, much more than these losers all over campus. If you want, I can come back to your house and we could talk about it in person. I am only making this offer once. I'm just very crushed to feel like I wasted so much this semester for nothing in return. Yours truly, Zach." I sent this to everyone. I didn't care that it was 3 a.m. I called my dad until he picked up, and I told him how scared I was. After he read the text, he took it upon himself to send Zach a lengthy text of his own, and he attempted to call him like 10 times, but Zach is clearly too much of a coward to pick up that phone call. I also went to the police station the next day with the text saying I wanted to press charges, and one of the people working there said that Zach would be contacted. Zach never picked up any of the calls from the police who were trying to get him to come in for questioning, nor did he answer any of their text messages. Zach completely disappeared. I never heard from him again. Between the police contacting him and my dad's pretty scary texts and voicemails, that basement-dwelling creep probably was shitting himself. Luckily, I never saw him on campus again or anything like that. But I can say, I know what it's like to deal with an actual stalker. The topic of today's video is college horror stories, whether they take place on campus or in a social setting such as college bars or parties. A big part of a person's college years will be the social aspect. Your social life may drastically improve from high school to college. However, many people don't realize the importance of smelling good while networking. People heavily judge you based on your scent, and smelling bad is a guaranteed way to make people not want to associate with you. Scentbird is your solution. It's a monthly subscription service that allows you to pick from countless colognes and perfumes from all the top fragrance brands like Gucci, Versace, Prada, and Tom Ford, and find your favorites without buying a big, expensive bottle, delivering them right to your door for just $17 a month. Each fragrance comes in a bottle made to last you 30 days. Some of the scents I received this month are Arrows Flame by Versace, Cross River Gorilla by Sanctuary, and Four Men Black Edition by Bentley. Each bottle comes with a card which explains what the fragrance smells like too. With Scentbird, you'll be excited to go out and socialize with people, especially as you get more and more compliments on your cologne or perfume. If you're not sure which fragrance is right for you, you can go on their website and take their quiz, which will tell you which scent is the best fragrance for you based on your lifestyle. The quiz takes less than a minute and gives you personalized results based on what you're looking for. If you're interested, use Nightmare55 off, scanning my QR code or at the link below to get 55% off your first month at Scentbird. My name is Chuck. I graduated from the University of California, Berkeley in 2016. My college experience was perfect. I was part of a frat, I managed my studies well, and spent just the right amount of time chasing girls. I'm actually still friends with a lot of my old frat brothers, and I recently got engaged to my fiancée Rosie, whom I also met at Berkeley. If you had asked me my opinion of Berkeley when I was a freshman though, I can assure you that my answer would be very, very different. What I'm about to tell you is one of the main reasons why. I was never overly ambitious in high school. The Berkeley atmosphere was extremely foreign to me, and it was weird being surrounded by so many self-proclaimed high achievers. As a freshman, I was quickly swept up into the frenzy of career development and planning the next 30 years of your life as an 18-year-old. Silly, I know, but that was the nature of my school at the time. If you wanted to get any sort of offer in the business world, having a strong LinkedIn profile was a necessity. I can still remember the stress of cultivating a professional image online, as if my future hinged on which people I connected with and what skills I listed. Regardless, I checked all the boxes and began my search for a summer internship. It wasn't long before my inbox chimed with an actual meaningful message. To my genuine surprise, a prestigious business firm had reached out to me, expressing interest in my profile. It wasn't one of those bot messages either. The substance of the message indicated that this was actually a unique message designed specifically for me. I read it over like 6 times before finally responding, and after about a day and a brief correspondence, I was invited to a first-round interview. I spent hours researching the company so I'd know what to expect come the interview, and I prepped myself with all the sample questions I could find. I soon got a message from a guy named Armand Slowinski. I'll never forget that name for as long as I live. He stated that he was to be my interviewer, and naturally, the first thing I did was do some background research on the guy. However, excitement soon gave way to puzzlement. I scoured LinkedIn for Armand's profile, expecting to glean some insight into the person I'd soon be meeting. Strangely, I found nothing. No trace of their professional footprint, no social media, nothing. I shrugged it off, attributing it to perhaps a preference for privacy or something like that. Armand and I agreed on a day and time, and he gave me the interview location. I searched it up on my phone and realized that it was some random coffee shop in Oakland. This is when I started getting confused. Why would an interview not take place in Berkeley? We had tons of coffee shops and perfect places for interviews in our college town, so I was just perplexed. The address online seemed pretty normal though, so I didn't think much of it. A day before the interview, I told my friend Riley about the situation. He was even more confused than I was, telling me that the situation seemed fishy. I agreed with him, but I figured it was worth it for the position I might be getting. He asked me how I was getting there, and I told him I was Ubering. He offered to give me a ride, as he wasn't doing anything at the time. I thanked him and took him up on his offer. Little did I know, I might not even be telling this story if he hadn't offered to drive me. It was 4 in the afternoon the next day, and Riley rolled up to my dorm. Admittedly, I was extremely nervous, and this was one of my first interviews. I got in the car and we were off. 20 minutes later, I told Riley to drop me off on the street, as I didn't want to be seen having a friend drop me off for an interview. I thanked him and he offered to wait for me. I asked him if he was sure, and he smirked, pulling out a big bag of weed from inside of his dashboard. I laughed, then shut the door. I walked the couple minutes to the location and froze in my tracks. I looked up at the literal construction site in front of me. There was no coffee shop. Even stranger, this entire area wasn't residential at all. Like, all of the buildings looked closed or private. Confused, I double-checked my phone and confirmed that I was in the right location. This entire block must have been recently demolished, so recently that even Google Maps hadn't updated. I pulled out my phone to call Riley, but before I could, a booming voice rang out behind me. "Chuck!" exclaimed a deep voice. I whipped around and was met with the appearance of an absurdly tall man wearing an expensive-looking black suit. Thank God, I thought, grateful that this whole ordeal hadn't been some kind of setup. His presence was commanding, yet oddly out of place amidst the derelict surroundings. I should also note that the car he was standing next to was a matte black Bentley. He walked toward me with a confused look on his face. We shook hands, and when I asked him about the construction site, he said he was just as surprised as I was. He furrowed his eyebrows and put his hand on his chin. "You know what, why don't we find someplace else? Get in," he said, motioning towards the Bentley. He walked back to the car and shouted over his shoulder, "Shotgun's all yours." Without another word, he got in the front seat and shut the door. Excitedly, I followed. I walked around the car just to admire it a little, and couldn't help but glance into the back seat. I expected to see the beautiful leather seats that you would expect in a Bentley, but instead, my eyes met a sight that sent a chill down my spine. Lying flat on the ground, obscured by the shadows, was a man. In his hand, he held something long and metal. Panic surged within me, my mind racing with the implications of what lay before me. This was a trap. I turned away from the car and ran as fast as I had ever run before. I heard the man yell my name from behind me, but I didn't even turn around to look. As I ran, I heard the one sound I was dreading, screeching tires. I shot a glance over my shoulder and saw the car turning around, pointing in my direction. I had to think quickly. There was no way I was going to outrun a car. It wasn't like I could just escape the situation. There wasn't really any open space around me, just an endless maze of streets. I could feel the terror coursing through my veins. I made it to the next intersection and faced a choice that may have decided my fate, left or right. Logic told me to just turn left as it was closer, but my feet chose for me before my brain could. I sprinted across the street to the right and darted down the road. I knew I didn't have long, 10, maybe 20 seconds at most. As if by some miracle, one of the buildings in front of me had a fire escape that looked just low enough to jump onto. With every ounce of my strength I had, I vaulted myself upwards, grabbing onto the ladder. I had never done a pull-up in my life, but in my mind, this was life or death. I made it up the ladder and kept climbing. The Bentley whipped around the corner and stopped on the street in front of the building. I couldn't see the driver, but I knew he was looking at me. There was nothing else I could do. If they chose to follow me, I'd just have to fight. The next minute felt like an eternity. The car stood there a little while longer, and then accelerated down the street, turning left to never be seen again. I couldn't breathe. I pulled out my phone and called Riley, basically screaming into the phone about what happened. I stayed on the fire escape until he found me. I got in the car, and we sped off in silence. The aftermath of this whole thing was pretty uneventful. I sort of blocked it out of my brain and refused to talk about it, even with Riley. As far as I was concerned, it never happened. But as much as I tried, there are times, like right now, when I can't help but recall every horrifying detail of what could have been the last day of my life. This is a fresh story happening pretty recently. My family and I were driving to college to help me move in, as I'm currently a first-year student. Once we arrived, I found out that I would be living in a Jack and Jill, which means you and another room share the same bathroom. So essentially, I'd be living with 3 other guys. I already knew one of them in the other room. We met at orientation and got to know each other. His roommate doesn't matter for this story though. It's my roommate Demora who I'm going to talk about. I got his socials beforehand and we exchanged information. Prior to moving in, I tried talking to him on Instagram to get to know him better, but his replies seemed dry. On top of that, his profile seems like one of those Discord mods that you see on Instagram Reels or TikTok. Once we moved in, I met him and ironically, he looked like a Discord mod, except he had a skinny build around my height. He looked very pale and had a peach fuzz mustache. I tried talking to him again. His talking style matched his texting style and seemed very introverted. He stuttered a lot and always tried to end the conversation as quickly as possible. I tried to lighten him up by asking what kind of music he listens to, but he said he doesn't, as music wouldn't fill his cup of emptiness. To make things more weird, when he set up his PS5, he immediately started gaming. It's not him gaming that's weird, it's what he does when he games. Demora makes these weird grunting noises, violently shakes his body, and laughs when he spams the controller, and he puts his feet in his desk cabinet, occasionally grabbing his feet and pulling them towards his body during his shakes as well. He whispers to himself as he plays by himself or with his online friends, and he usually repeats what he whispered twice in a gigglish manner. He stays in the room 24/7 and almost never does homework. His movements alone freak me out as I'm trying to sleep. But there's more to this story. Sometime around the first week, I went out with some friends that I met in my dorm building, and I came back pretty late to my dorm, around 1 a.m. Demora looked asleep in his bed, so I nudged it off. As I went to my cabinet, which was right next to my bed, I felt my arm hairs get goosebumps and felt the urge to turn around. So I did. Demora was staring right at me with a slight grin on his face. I yelped and said, "Holy fuck, Demora, why are you looking at me like that?" He laughed it off and said, "Dark time," and turned around to face the wall. This creeped me out, and it happened, I want to say 3 more times. I tried to move out, but my college said they didn't have any dorms open, so I tried to move into the other room, but one of the other roommates didn't want to leave as well. This meant I was stuck with Demora for the semester, and I just had to deal with it. About 3 months passed by, and I come back from my English class. When I opened the door to my dorm, Demora stood up in a panic, asking me why I'm back so early. This was weird, as my English class actually ended late, hence me getting back late. I asked him if he needed the room to himself, and he declined, striking some weird pose that looked like it was from some anime, and he said that I shouldn't be worried at all. I visibly cringed at him, and his statement only made me more uncomfortable. I noticed he had a box on his desk, and when I brought it up, he told me that it wasn't important. I shrugged it off. At this time, I noticed that my iPhone charger and my scissors were missing. I asked Demora if he saw it, and he said he had it. He handed me the scissors, and as he was handing me the iPhone charger, the cable knocked his box over to me as well. The box opened, and what I saw made my heart sink. A sticky note that had my name on it fell out. Alongside this was what looked to be a see-through case. Inside of it, eyelashes, a pair of glasses, a pair of my socks, and a disposable photo of me that I took as a joke. He collected all of it up off the floor as he tried explaining the meaning of it, and I yelled at him to get out. He left immediately. I texted my RA the situation, and he told me that he was out at the moment, but when he comes back tomorrow, to show him the box as evidence so that they would have a reason to kick Demora out. So I got the box and hid it within my laundry bin. I felt really rattled, and the sight of my roommate disgusted me. However, in an hour, he came back. I just told him to stay on his side and not to talk to me. After that, no words were spoken. I tried to stay awake out of fear that he might try to find the box, but after it being a long day, I fell asleep around 2 a.m. When I woke up, I saw Demora was gone, and it felt good seeing him out of the room for once, but then I remembered the box. I went to my laundry bin, and it was gone. I panicked, and not long after, my RA was knocking on the door. I let him in and told him the story. While he did believe me, he said he can't do anything without that box, otherwise he'd just be going off my word alone, which isn't much. I felt like I was losing my mind. The RA left, and about 5 hours later, Demora came back. I asked him what he did with the box. He played dumb and said, "What box? I don't know what you're talking about." I pressured him to stop playing dumb, but Demora kept denying it. I couldn't stand, look, nor be in the same room with him anymore. It's now second semester, and yes, I'm still dorming with Demora, unfortunately. He did let me know that he will never do it again, and that if he does, he'll let me know and we'll move out immediately. I took his word, and we're still dorming as of today. However, I stay out of the room as much as I can. He still creeps me out. And the worst part is that I can't sleep sometimes, nor focus during the day, as I keep thinking of what was in the box. Why did he steal my photo? Why did he steal my socks? What were the glasses for? The part that leaves me scared each time is what those eyelashes were doing there. And perhaps weirdest of all was he labeled the box with my name. This happened to me during my freshman year of college in 2019. I'm graduated now, but I often think about it. During Halloween week, my college had crazy parties daily. I attended a Big Ten school, so there are always fraternity costume parties, and even the bars make people dress up. It gets pretty wild, lots of booze, lots of police, and lots of memories. This event happened to me on the Saturday of Halloween week. Our football team had a huge win that day, and my friends and I were going to this one particular fraternity off campus to celebrate the victory. We knew about this because one of my friends, Alexandra, was dating a guy on the team. We got to the frat party around 11 o'clock, and things got pretty crazy. Everyone was getting drunk really fast, and we were all booing the school that we beat in different chants while the music blasted. I was taking shots and dancing with all my friends, having a blast. It's critical to note that my phone had died during this time. I had given it to Alexandra to put in her purse. Later, I told my friends that I had to go to the bathroom and to wait for me by the DJ booth. We were all pretty intoxicated at this point. While I was in the bathroom peeing, I heard some frat brother in the house scream "cops" at the top of his lungs, and people started screaming and scrambling to get out of the house. I sprinted out of the frat house and was greeted by multiple cop cars and lights flashing. People were sprinting in different directions. Some cops were already talking to the frat brothers, while others were trying to catch underage people. In my intoxicated state, I realized I didn't have my phone. I started yelling out for my friends while avoiding the cops. Realizing I wasn't going to be able to find them in the crowd, I decided to start making my way home, even though I wasn't entirely sure how to get home. This frat house was pretty far off campus in a different part from other frats. I started making my trek home, and it was absolutely freezing. Even though it was only October, it was like 37 degrees that night. I'm still heavily tipsy, but conscious of everything around me. After a while, I knew I needed a break to warm up and hopefully sober up. I saw a building that looked like one of the academic buildings I'd heard about, so I approached it, opened the door, and stepped inside. It was pretty dark in there, but a few exit signs at different door entrances illuminated a decent portion of the inside. After 5 minutes, I started to sober up a little bit and realized I wasn't in an academic building. I was in a warehouse. I was much warmer, but I became nervous about the eerie feeling around me. I went to open the door, and a pit sank in my stomach. It was locked. How could it have been opened if it was locked from the inside? I started to make my way towards a door near the exit sign. I pushed it open and went through the door, expecting it to lead me to outside, but it was to another part of the building. This room was much smaller, illuminated by a low red light. There was a buzzing noise in the room from some machine. I could see chains hanging from the ceiling and steam in the room. I shit you not, it was like a typical horror movie scene. I went to turn around and go back through the door, but this door was also locked behind me. Sheer panic set through me, and at this point, I was trying not to break down. I leaned up against the wall and slid down silently, crying. This is when I heard it. A door slammed shut and footsteps. I instantly went silent and my eyes widened. I heard another door shut and more footsteps. It was getting closer to my area. I saw the door next to me, and as quietly as possible, I opened it and snuck through. I started wading through the hanging chains and the steam. I heard the door from the previous room open and the footsteps approaching, and they were big, heavy footsteps. My fight or flight kicked in and I came near a window. With all my might, I kicked it 5 times with my foot, shattering it. This was when I heard the feet running towards the door. I had maybe 10 seconds to spare. I leapt out the window, not even realizing that the other side of the building I was now on happened to be a high drop. I fell like 10 feet out of the window, landing on top of 2 recycling bins. I pushed myself off, shocked by the impact, and looked up at the window. It was shattered, and there was no one in the window frame. I dashed underneath some pine trees a few feet away, hiding myself in the shadows. When I looked back up, that's when I saw a figure looking out the window, looking in all directions for me. My whole body went numb in fear. As quietly as I could, I snuck across the street and ran. I ran for my life as fast as I could, for I didn't know how long until I recognized the side of campus my dorm was on. I got back to my dorm, and my friends were waiting for me outside, panicked and freaking out. They told me I had been gone for almost 4 hours. The following day, I told them of my experience. My friends' mouths hung open as they listened to me talk. After further discussion, I discovered that it was a building that hadn't been used in several years. The pit in my stomach hit me again. Whoever was in the building wasn't a cop. He wasn't night security. This was some random person after me. It still makes me sick to this day. If I hadn't been more quiet or thought as quickly, I could be dead. Even though I tried to find out information, nothing came up. It still remains the scariest thing that's ever happened to me.